Hey everyone, welcome back to New Slang. I'm music journalist Thomas Mooney. This is episode 156, where I'm joined by singer-songwriter Pony Bradshaw. So I spoke with Bradshaw last week about his new album called Calico Jim. It's officially out this Friday, January 29th. Honestly, I cannot believe that January is nearly over. Last year just moved at like that glacial speed, and this year is just like in a double time. Anyway though, Bradshaw has become like one of my favorite songwriters of the past few years. And actually, like last year, he was going to be playing a show at Blue Light, I want to say in early April, which obviously got wiped out due to COVID. I'm pretty sure we would have had him on New Slang way back then, had things just been normal. Anyway, he released an album called Sudden Opera back in like 2018 that quickly became one of my favorite albums. I just really loved how big that album felt. There was something very orchestral about it, even though it wasn't anything remotely chamber pop or like it wasn't just a lot of like violins and cellos and stuff like that. It just felt really, really giant and ornate, and not even like in a pretentious way or where you could tell that they were trying to cover up bad songs by making them sound cool. This new album, Calico Jim, it's a little bit more down home. It's a little bit more what you would expect to come out of northern Georgia or southern Tennessee. It's a little bit slower paced and has a heightened focus on the storytelling arcs within those songs. There's still some of those atmospheric elements, but they're not as bold or as monolithic, which, yeah, all of that really just serves the purpose of the song. We talk about a lot of the reasons why that was during this one. And yeah, I really enjoyed talking with James on this one. Today's presenting partner is our pals over at Desert Door Texas Soto. If you're asking yourself what exactly Desert Door or a Soto is, well, it's a premium, high-quality spirit that is similar to a tequila or a mezcal, but in my estimation, it's more refined, smooth, and fragrant. It has a distinct and intriguing palate that picks up on hints of vanilla and citrus while maintaining a healthy earthiness that is quite enjoyable. One of my favorite features about Desert Door is just how versatile it really is. If you want to feel fancy and a little highbrow, it's perfect for a variety of cocktails that call for lime wedges and coarse salt, chopped ginger, agave nectar, sprigs of thyme and sticks of cinnamon. If you're down to muddle some fresh fruit, all that kind of stuff, it's perfect. It's great for experimentation and fine-tuning all of your mixologist skills. And then also, if you're a little bit more down home and casual, you got that denim jacket on. It's just perfect for those short and sweet, simple go-to favorites that hit the mark every time. I'm talking about ranch waters and Moscow mules and palomas and Mexican Coca-Cola with Desert Door. What I love so much about Desert Door is just how genuine and authentically West Texan they are as well. They go out and harvest Soto plants out in the wild and are aware and knowledgeable conservationists at heart. So next time you're at your neighborhood liquor store, get yourself a bottle of Desert Door. I'll throw a link into the show notes for more information. So yeah, let's get on to it. Here is Pony Bradshaw. Let's go ahead and start off with, you have this record coming out just next week, and Calico Jim. And it's been such a strange time this past couple of years, this last year specifically. First off, like, was this recorded during this past year, or does it stem back to even a little bit further back, pre-quarantine times?
Actually, it was recorded in August, so not even 6 months ago. Yeah, so I was right in the middle of all of this pandemic and quarantining, right in the midst of it.
Yeah, I actually kind of there's been a couple of people that I've talked with who obviously they push their records back because of just the uncertainty. But there's been a few people who I've talked with who they recorded these records, their newest record, within the last year, and they already have it out or they're getting ready to put it out. And I think like just sometimes as you know, like the industry sometimes will just set on a record, quote unquote, waiting for the right time. And sometimes I think a lot of times the right time is just to get it out as quickly as possible. So you're still excited about those songs and everything that's attached to that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the latter part of that. I agree with all what you said. The industry, there's certain guidelines and structures that they like, which makes sense whenever you think about it financially. It makes sense if you release a record when you can tour or hit the road and play shows and help, expose your record more, sell more records, all that kind of stuff. So it makes sense to put it out when you're touring, but I have no motives other than putting out music just whenever I feel like it, whenever I want to. And that's a big part of the reason why I left Rounder, recently, because I wanted to control when I released the record, for the most part. So, timing and strategy, all that comes into play when you're part of the industry of music. But in the big grand scheme of things, these timelines, I guess we'll look back at them as pretty ridiculous, and it all, look like some kind of, I don't know what it looks like, but nobody's going to care when you released it, how much money that record made during that time or where it was on the chart. If it's good, it'll be remembered. It's that simple, really.
Yeah. And I think it all, for me, I can understand like how, you want to have all those things in line and in order and do the best that you can, but also like sometimes like, there's a time limit on some things because, you don't want to have like 3 records in the works, you know what I mean? Just waiting on time because like, and of course, like there's been plenty of stories over the years of a record being shelved and just like that artist kind of moving on from that because it doesn't like bring them the same, I don't know, they don't feel the same way about it. And I think like a lot of this creation and the art, especially when it comes to music and recording, these are like supposed to be like, snapshots, and there's an aspect of them having like getting out into the world as quickly as possible and being as close to, in a lot of ways, like that live performance, which are just obviously like super quick snapshots.
Yeah, I feel that way about records too. Like I like to move on quick. I'm already ready to make another record. This one's not even out yet, so I'm already making plans for the studio for this next record. So yeah, there could be a huge disconnect on performing these songs if you just sat on them for years. You know what I mean? But you also could, in the setting on a record for 2 years, lose interest, and then when it's maybe finally time to play that or release it, you might have gained interest in it again. So much time goes past. So, but yeah, I'm more of the let's put it out, let's make a record now, let's do it all quick, which is probably not a good business model. Like if you're trying to sustain a career and pay your bills and stuff like that, but because it costs money to make a record too,
Yeah.
And put some money into the marketing and publicity side of it. That all costs. So I understand why there's a couple year cycles in between records, but yeah, my preference is to put one out every year. 12 months in between at the most is what I would like to do, as long as I have material and I'm working and feeling good about it.
Yeah, I think like if there's one thing that I've learned from talking with a lot of artists over the years, it's that for the most part, like your favorite song is kind of like that thing that you're working on now. How often is that the case? Where so the movement of the record is, I think it's paramount to all that. Speaking of which, like one of the quotes that I use paramount because I read it in this little thing that I found really interesting that you said was about how you guys wanted to like practice restraint on the recording process of this. Is that like also just in part because of how grand the last record was, Southern Opera, and how big it is, or is it also tied to like these songs being a specific feeling?
It's both. Yeah. I mean, the last record was pretty big, and I just prefer the songs to be forward more than the everything around it, the style, the music, and all that. So it wasn't just trying to go against what Southern opera represented. It was just what I initially wanted, anyways. So it's not like I left that frame of mind ever. I've always wanted to make records where they're kind of, song, story, narrative, the vocal first, and everything. Just over time listening to music, you start realizing how you connect with music, and you start seeing the similarities of the ones that you do connect with, and you're like, oh, I hear what this guy's saying, because the music is not over stylized or super avant-garde. It's because they're letting the story be the main focus. So I prefer that way, and restraint was the best way I could describe that, because we could have went. I wanted it to feel like an actual performance too, like dudes in a studio making a song together, and you could feel that. I wanted to feel that, and if you fill it up with 8 guitar parts and overdubs everywhere, then it doesn't even feel like it's living, breathing thing. It just feels kind of like a piecemeal kind of sound bites on your Pro Tools put together kind of sound,
Right. Yeah.
So,
I think it also, for this record specifically, it lends because a lot of these songs are those little vignettes, these little stories, these little character-driven vignettes, and that's obviously like story focused. And when it's a little bit, I guess everything else is a little bit toned down, you're able to focus more so on that story.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and there's something in even the way you deliver or sing a song. If you're always singing in 11, it's really hard to pay attention more to the subtleties of the lyrics or the story. So you kind of have to practice restraint, not just in the musical part of making a record, but even how you sing it. You know what I mean? So this one's a lot softer in that way as well. I feel like Southern opera, it felt like I was screaming the whole record. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I really love that record though. I think that's such
I have a feeling that each record I make is going to be a different beast altogether, and that's, I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Well, this record to me, like one of the things that I felt that a lot of the stories, as far as like, especially something like Calico Jim or like Hillbilly Possessed, obviously you're talking about this specific corner of your home, right? Of Northwest Georgia and all that stuff, Dade County and everything. But what I felt like so much of like these stories, what they felt like to me was whenever you'd hear like your parents talk about, oh, do you remember so and so? And then like they'd go, oh yeah, like I was in high school with him. Yeah, I guess he was a couple years older than me. Yada yada yada. And then it's like, well, this is what happened. And those stories, to me, feel very much like that. As far as like this, cool, like really interesting, I guess like maybe a little bit of strangeness to them, because especially like with something like Hillbilly Possessed.
Yeah, it's strange, but it's almost literal too. It's like it's an actual story that a lot of folks have been a part of around here. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I wanted to write about North Georgia. I'm not sure why I felt so strong about that. I'm glad I did. I don't think that I will always make records that are so focused on where I live. You know what I mean? But right now, in this time of my life, it felt important to do that. And like I told you, it was recorded in August, and probably 80% of the songs, 8 of the songs on the record were written during the pandemic. That little window of probably 3 to 4 months from like March up until making the record. So it was all fresh in my mind, and I said, I want to make this record right now, because I had another batch of songs ready to go for a different record if we wanted to go that route, which is what I'm plotting now. Always plotting, making records. And that's my favorite thing to do more than touring, is just making records, like not songs. I like writing songs, obviously, but it's more of a record thing that I think in terms of.
Is it is that part of like the recording process, or is that more so like plugging in these bits of that story to tell like that, not necessarily like that full on concept record or anything like that, but like plugging in those hoes and seeing it from a little bit further back as far as like what you love so much about that record making process?
I read a lot of books, literature, novels, and such. So whenever I see music, like in images, or I guess I don't see it in the stereotypical way that people make records or make songs or even take part in the business. I see every record like a book almost, it's like planning and plotting out a book. An author releases a book every few years or even longer sometimes, and that's how records are like books to me. They're not like this fun thing that you can't wait to get out on the road and perform for everyone for a few years. I don't ever see it that way, and a lot of people do, I believe. It's how books, you don't have to perform them, obviously. I'm sure they do those reading tours and stuff like that, but once it's over, it's like you're spent, and you're glad that that's out of you. And that's how I feel about records. So sometimes it's hard for me to hit the road and tour, even though that's a crucial part of this. It's hard to hit the road and tour and just hammer those songs out for a year live. I'm always wanting to play even newer songs, but it's tough trying to figure out your own path in this business.
Yeah, I find it really interesting about the whole, you writing most of this, like the bulk of the record in between, like during this pandemic, because a lot of these songwriters I've talked with over the past year, it was almost like, I guess like the best thing you can give a songwriter is time. If that's probably the thing, like if you asked everyone pre-pandemic, what's the one thing you want, and most of them would probably say time. But then like you're given this huge block of time to, and I don't know if like art for them works that way as far as being able to songwrite like that, where it's just like you're stuck at home and you're now write. So what I'm saying though is like I find it really interesting that you were able to utilize the time in that way, where some other songwriters I've talked with, they had to like channel that artistic expression in other forms of art.
Yeah. It's phases and stages for me. I try to wake up and think about. I've been thinking about writing a lot lately, and it's like, you ever seen A Beautiful Mind, the movie? Mm-hmm. With Russell Crowe, and he's lost his mind. He's kind of crazy or whatever. I can't remember what it's about totally. I think he was hallucinating, seeing people, right?
Yeah, I believe he was.
But he would see equations floating up in the air in front of him. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I started feeling like that about songs, unfinished songs I have, and it's like you're always trying to rein in these songs and control them, and it's very hard to do. I think that's what makes it's a difference between someone that writes songs and doesn't. And we all have things floating up there, but pulling them in and shaping them and finishing them, it's a difficult thing to do. I'm trying to let them float up there and just hang out without me trying to impose my will on them so much anymore. And I constantly have things just floating around up there, and I write them in my notebooks and different files on the computer and stuff like that. I still try to control them a little bit and shape them up. But so even when I'm not putting pen to paper and really focusing in on a song, I'm still writing like constantly all day. I don't have a normal job. I don't have a job really. I'm not playing shows either right now. So, but yeah, I mean, every day I'm writing, even when I'm not literally writing, you know what I mean? So
right.
and you can squander time pretty easily. So I can understand how people that tour a lot during this pandemic and they couldn't, so they maybe didn't know how to use that time efficiently, but I never have like touring a lot. Like I said, I know it's part of the deal and I do it, but I don't tour as much as a lot of folks out there. So when all this quarantining started happening, I was like, man, this is perfect for me. I kind of like this. And it just felt like an exaggerated kind of day-to-day, my normal day-to-day, just a little bit exaggerated. No restaurants or movie theaters, but I'm still sitting around the house writing in my robe, being lazy, writing, and then going and making dinner. And, it kind of felt the same. I'm tired of it now. Obviously, it's been almost a year, so that sucks. And I have children, and they actually got COVID. Their mom and stepdad and them, they all got COVID, and I didn't get to see them for almost a month, and it was right around Christmas. So I don't like this for sure, but it hasn't been a negative impact on my writing. It's actually just freed up more time for me to write more.
Yeah. No, I
that was a long answer to that kind of question, wasn't it?
This episode of New Slang is brought to you by Hot Damn Coffee. Rolling in from the hills of eastern Tennessee is Hot Damn Coffee. It's a down-home company that roasts single-origin, high-quality coffees from around the world. Their year-round roasts come from certified farms in Ethiopia, Tanzania, and Nicaragua. Check out the Hot Damn website over at hotdamn.coffee. There you can find more info on their operation and roasting process and some helpful tips on how to brew the best cup of coffee. They've certainly made my mornings that much better. And to be perfectly honest, I enjoy a nice cup of coffee at all hours of the day. Some of my favorites have been the Tanzanian pea berry in medium roast and the medium roast of Nicaraguan with the honey process. While there, check out their Hot Damn Coffee Club, which is a monthly subscription service. With the holiday season coming upon us, it's just really kind of the perfect gift. I don't care how difficult or easy a person is to shop for, they'll always be good with items like high quality coffee. And of course, right now, if you throw in the promo code SLANG in all caps, that's SLANG, you'll get 20% off your order. And if you're signing up for the Coffee Club subscription service, they'll take 20% off that first month and also throw in a bonus 8-ounce bag of their Nicaraguan coffee. Again, that's SLANG in all caps. Head over to hotdamn.coffee and sign up today. All right, let's get back to the episode. No, I mean, I get it, because, like, I feel like I'm very much kind of the same way. I'm typically, like, a homebody, and it is very, very easy to, like, squander that time, but, like, it's kind of, like, just trying to, like, not necessarily make yourself, but I always think when there's something that's kind of a task, it's that first 5 minutes of making yourself do it, and then you kind of just forget about, like, not wanting to do it. And so, like, for me, like, it's easy. Like, just, you can just throw on some Netflix or, like, Season of The Wire or something and just kind of, like, waste the day, waste the week. But then, like, a couple of weeks go by, and I just kind of always felt, I just need to start doing something. And I guess, like, a lot of the times with those other songwriters that I'm talking about, they wound up finding other things as far as, like, gardening or, like, writing, not necessarily songs, but, like, writing other stuff, trying to, like, do short story writing or, like, free just, whatchamacallit, when you just kind of, like, write off the top of your head kind of thing. Or, like, painting or just other stuff to kind of get the juices flowing, because, it's, I don't know, like, to me, I guess, like, we sometimes get it stuck in our head that you as the writer, when you write a song, we're only, like, counting the time when you picked up the guitar, picked up the pen, started jotting down the lines, and then till it's finished. And it's clearly not like that. I think that the Beautiful Mind analogy is exactly, like, spot on, because there is all that time beforehand. And even during the process that you're just constantly thinking about it, or not necessarily even constantly, but it's always up there.
Yeah. 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 It's not as black and white as it could seem to some folks. You sit down, start a song, finish a song, it's over with. It's definitely not that way for me. And yeah, I do paint. I mean, I'm not a painter, but I paint. I have oil paints, canvases, and my easel. And I bought my youngest son some painting stuff. He likes to paint. And I tried the gardening thing in the beginning of the pandemic. I'm not much of a green thumb. I don't like doing things that I don't do well, and that's one of them. So it's hard to do that. I watch a ton of movies. I read constantly. So yeah, all those things feed in to each other. If you just sit at home and just write songs all day and nothing else, that kind of, I don't know what would come out of that really, Yeah. But I haven't focused in on. I know a lot of people write poems and stories and work on. I don't know if it would sound kind of crazy to say songwriters working on a novel just randomly without ever have written a story. So, but I can't. I obsess over the thing I do, and I want to do it the best I can, and I can't write songs to the best of my ability while also giving 100% to writing stories. I mean, that just mathematically doesn't really work out, Got to give them my all to one of the things. Painting, that's not a thing that I would ever try to do seriously, so it's fun to just mess around with that,
Yeah, like there's. Yeah. Are you familiar with the writer John Crowker? I think that's how he pronounces it.
Yeah, the Into the Wild fella.
Yeah. So he was on this podcast that I listen to all the time called The Press Box, and because Into the Wild, I guess, is like now, as far as the book goes, I think it's like 25 years old now, which is ridiculous.
That's crazy.
So they're interviewing him, and he's like not he didn't start out as like a professional writer. He was a mountaineer trying to climb mountains, and then he fell into journalism, and then that's how he ended up becoming a writer, and of course writing all these other books. And he was talking about how Into the Wild, writing that book was like the only enjoyable book process of like the actual writing that he enjoyed. And, like everything else was just so fucking hard. And I guess like my point on all this is that writing like a novel, writing a book is like really fucking hard, and like it's taxing on like not just you, the person, the individual, but on your family, and just go read about J.D. Salinger and like his relationships with family, and that sounds like writing a book, like a novel, like that. That sounds like the way that a lot of people think all writers are, like songwriters. I feel like if you're writing a novel, you need to have a good solid schedule, and that you work and consistently go to it. And, rituals probably matter a lot more in writing a novel than it does writing a song. At least for me, if I was going to write a story, I would need to wake up every morning and, sit there for 3 hours writing and do that every day. Weekends off maybe, but with songwriting, it's a little bit more loose than that, Yeah.
For me, it is. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because you're fitting in. You don't have to. Maybe it's that you don't have to. You're not using as much to tell, and so, like at the you're writing a 5-minute song versus I guess even like the minimum short stories is probably a good 5-minute read at least. But
and you're singing and you're playing an instrument. There's more things involved in that matter, that take a little time and some perspective to look back on. And writing a story, it should be musical and have some melody and tempo, but it's not being sung in a voice with a guitar or a piano. So there's less involved in writing a story in that sense, I guess.
Yeah. Well, what I was wanting to ask though is like you are a reader. Do you pick up on like the or like have you borrowed any of like the I guess like the cadence of a novel or anything like that?
just like the pacing of that side of, I guess, the writing side of when you're reading, or is it just more just to deal with, entertainment aspects?
I'm sure I've borrowed and stolen from all of these folks, especially in the beginning, unconsciously more so now. If I do, it's just, I'm influenced by a lot of different writers, and they all have their own styles and content of what they write about too. I mean, I love Dennis Johnson. You know who that is?
Dennis Johnson?
Dennis Johnson?
No, I guess not.
No. He died a couple of years ago, I believe, but he's a favorite of mine. And trying to finish Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky. I've started it like 8 times, and I'm about 400 pages deep, which is halfway right now. So I read a lot, man. And just the way that some of my favorite writers looked at building a book. I would have separate parts, different movements. Like Dostoevsky was a big Shakespeare fan, so he was very dramatic in his way he wrote, and it kind of felt like a play. If you know that he loved Shakespeare and you start reading his books like that, you could see that influence clearly. But so I think if you learned my influences of writers and then you listen to my records, you'll be like, oh, I see how he was influenced by this or that, But without knowing any of the writers, you might not recognize it,
Yeah.
And I don't sit down and purposely like, oh, I'm going to write just like this guy. It's just what happens. Influences, they build us,
Yeah.
They make us who we are.
Yeah, of course. I think like with Dostoevsky, like any of his books, like minimum 5 stars on. I think
he's one of the greatest to me. People say you're either a Dostoevsky or a Tolstoy dude, and you can't really be both. And I kind of believe that. I try to do the Tolstoy, and it seems boring to me compared to him for some reason. But some people think the complete opposite of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I find like what's like the writing and like, or not the writing, but the reading of our authors and writers of, everything from short stories to even journalism, like any of their long form kind of stuff like that. I always wonder if there's ever anything like where you realize that you're picking up on like, oh, I bet like it's probably more so if you were able to like map out vocabulary. I bet that's a stronger tie. Yeah,
probably so. Yeah. And because I love Dostoevsky, he was a Russian, obviously, and I'm not a Russian. He lived in the 1800s, and I live in, it's 2021 now. So the content of what I write would be nothing similar to what he writes, but maybe underneath all of it, at the bones of it, could have some similarities, because he wrote a lot about peasants, which would be rural folk. And I live in a rural town, so it would kind of connect in that sense,
Yeah.
This episode of New Slang is brought to you by the Blue Light Live here in Lubbock, Texas. Blue Light has undoubtedly been my home away from home over the years, and has played such a vital role not only for my development as a journalist, but obviously it's been one of the foundational pieces for a lot of your favorite songwriters and bands who have made it out of the Lubbock area over the years. And of course, as a music venue, they've played such a pivotal role for a lot of your favorite bands just in general. One of my favorite parts about Blue Light is just how versatile the place can truly be. I've seen it crowded and rowdy on a Saturday night for a rock and roll band, and I've seen it dead still on a Wednesday when a legendary singer-songwriter rolls through town. What you should do is go over to bluelightlubbock.com and check out all the new merch they've added. Hats, t-shirts, both short and long sleeve. They also have hoodies and koozies, and just added some sweatshirts that are very much an homage to the college sweatshirt that John Belushi wore in Animal House. And then of course, maybe the crown jewel of their new merch is the Varsity Club style jacket in blue satin. I got one the other day, and yeah, it's just one of my favorite things I own now. And yeah, I don't know, I just love it. Anyway, you can check out all of their new merch over at bluelightlubbock.com. As always, I'll throw a link into the show notes for easy access. Okay, let's get back to the show.
Which connecting to like going back to like these being like little vignettes, these little character-driven songs. Like, are these stories like or these characters? Are they like, usually I guess like a lot of people they'll mention how like this character is based off of this person. It's never it's an amalgamation of people and not necessarily like one person. Is that true for you? Like, what is like what are some of these characters? Are they based off of anyone like you personally know, or just like the idea of that person?
Yeah, all of that. Just the idea mixed with my thoughts, some of my experiences, some people's I know experiences, historical experience. It's just everything. I don't think I've ever sat down and wrote a song about this one person and this one experience and just kept to the facts. I haven't never done that, I don't think. So yeah, it's just one big old stew of anything that just feels good when I sing it. It's very selfish. It sounds like whenever I describe what I write and why I write what I write. It's to entertain me first, and then I'm certain that there are people out there like me. So then maybe they connect with it. But yeah, it's just a big stew of everything that interests me.
Yeah.
I used to write more personal songs, I think we all start off that way, more heart on the sleeve kind of thing. It's an easier way to get out your emotions, and you don't need any kind of education in anything. It's just whatever you're feeling, and so that's a real instinctual way to write in the beginning, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's as like I think like a lot of times it's tied to teenage angst of like, the world doesn't get me, and here's why.
Yeah. Yep. And then it goes into that punk territory. The world doesn't get me and I don't give a fuck. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They rail against it harder. So yeah, but that's not how I write these days for sure. I just have no interest in that type of writing.
Yeah. Was there, what song, I guess, like kind of kicked off this record as far as like, what was like the earliest of this 10-song record?
Like what kind of inspired, say, hey, what this collection is going to be about Calico Jim and this area? I would say, I think the Calico Jim song is the one that kind of sparked the other ones,
Mm-hmm.
And then there were two that I'd written already that I put on there, which was Bodark and Guru. Those were a couple years old. They just seemed to fit, It worked out okay. And they gave a different kind of vibe than the rest of the songs. But I'd say Calico Jim, and then like Sawtooth Jericho, and then Jimmy the Cop. It just started feeling like a lot of it was related to each other, and that's probably because I wrote them all in a tight window, with the same things going through my head. I was reading some Rousseau and his essays about the savage and the original man and how the uncivilized man, and it just kind of resonated with me, like the mountain folks back in the day, the Scotch Irish, hanging out in the mountains, just wanting to be left alone, and uncivilized was a derogatory word to describe these folks, uncivilized, but they preferred it. And then, industrialization came and started drawing them out, some of them, and then it took over the towns, and outsiders started buying up all the rural areas to mine for whatever they wanted to mine. And then I think each song started kind of pushing me to write another song to lay out a broader story of North Georgia, which was fun to write. It was like Faulkner's kind of world that he created down there in Mississippi, the fictional world. it just felt like that. And there's a part of me that wants to continue that. I don't think on the next record, but maybe the next one, like a brother sister record to Calico Jim. I've got some songs written that I think would work that way, so maybe that'll happen.
Yeah. You mentioned like the living off the mountain kind of thing. You had that line in Jimmy the Cop about the uncle like living off the grid since he left Roan Mountain. So yeah.
Yeah, not a lot of opportunities job-wise around here, so a lot of people cooking meth.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't run in those circles, so I don't have the insider information, like I would have as a younger man. I'm not that wild anymore. I'm pushing 41 and I have children, but I have plenty of reserves to work on for, I think, the rest of my life on being poor and sleeping on couches and doing bad things to people, to myself. I've lived a long and kind of weird life, so I don't have to. A lot of people, I think, feel like you have to continue that so you can actually say you're being authentic when you write, but I don't know if I agree with that, man. I mean, I think John Prine said he would trade away all his songs if it meant being happy or miserable. He would choose happy and just not write anymore, and I feel the same way.
Oh no, that's one of my big things actually, is like we romanticize the the struggling artist and the like the Townes Van Zandt kind of characters of having to be quote unquote rock bottom to get any of this great art. And I couldn't agree less. Like, it's just because you you don't have to be miserable to write great art or to create. And I think a lot of
you don't have to currently be miserable. You can recall what misery felt like at some point in your life and just draw on that eternally. You don't need to stay miserable. Is how I feel about that.
Yeah. One of the things like one of my buddies talks about is how, it comes to the authenticity thing of, if you need to keep it authentic. And it's like, well, if that was the case, then like legit coal miners would have like the best coal mining songs, or like, and how many times have you met these people who, if you ask them to write a great story, they could tell you a great story, but they couldn't necessarily put it into that form. So it's always like just more so like being adjacent to whatever that is.
Yeah. You could live within a community that is, poor and a dark place seemingly, and not be poor and dark and still have an authority on what it feels like and it be authentic. You could, you don't have to be poor to write about that type of thing. And man, there's so many history books that give such good information that you could just take it from there and it feels accurate, So I don't buy that anymore either. I know it's a romantic way and it's a good not excuse, but I can't think of the word, but an excuse will work here. It's a good excuse to just fucking be shitty,
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm doing it for the sake of making art, whatever. But I don't buy it. I don't buy it at all. And it usually doesn't work whenever it's coming from those folks that do buy it and do swear by it. It's usually like, I don't enjoy their tunes or records anyway, so it's pointless to even think about it,
Yeah, as like listeners will go like, "Oh, he mentions this all the time," but it's to me like we typically interchange authenticity and being genuine, and those aren't like the same thing. And to me, like you being genuine and being a genuine songwriter or an artist is way more important than you being authentic. Just a little bit of authenticity goes like a long way.
Yeah, and intent too. It matters quite a bit, you know. Yeah, I mean, right. Everybody has different tastes and what they think is good or what they think is authentic, and we're never going to please everyone. So I just try to do what I enjoy and stick with it.
Yeah. I want to go back to like you talking about recording this record in Arkansas in Little Rock, and obviously we did have restraints because of COVID and everything like that, where you're able to write this record within a few months in that period, but you know, I'm assuming that like that doesn't necessarily mean you had that same amount of time or as much leeway when it came to like the arranging of the record and like understanding the feel of what this record was. Was there a lot of, or was there just like a, you know, I guess, was there any kind of like pre-production aspects, or did you guys go in there with kind of like more of a looser slate on what you wanted this record to be when you went in to start recording?
Well, we kept it simple. The songs were completely written. I'd written them to exactly, I'd sent memos to everyone, voice memos from my iPhone. And we made a record exactly like the memo was. It wasn't like, hey, let's maybe move the chorus around here. So that was set in stone before even going there. And what I think is crucial is who you choose to play with, the personnel. If you choose a drummer or a rhythm section that you know understands your taste and is similar in what they listen to and who they admire as a drummer or a producer, then it's going to be easy to just, you know, just say, hey, I want it to have this kind of feel. And it's very easy, you know, if you got friends that get you and understand what you want. So I think that's the first step in making records, is to get the right people, not just good people, like in studio people. There's tons of those guys that are just amazing musicians. But if you can't speak the same language, then it's not going to work. So that's number one. Number two is I didn't want much. You know what I mean? I wanted it to be kind of simple when we were in there and just sound like guys making music together. So we weren't trying to reinvent the wheel. We're just letting the songs, whatever felt like should be there, is what we kind of went with. And my guitarist and I had been playing together for like 3 years, and we've been doing duo stuff. But I think most of the songs we'd never played them live, and he hadn't written parts yet because I'd just written them during the pandemic, you know. But yeah, we just kept it simple. We didn't think too hard about pre-production. And the drummer, Patty Ryan, he's from Tulsa. He's from that same. He's John Prine, big John Prine fan, and he's like, "Yeah, man, just whatever the song calls for, that's what we'll do." And I'm like, "That's just how I feel about it too." And that's how I felt about this record. I might not feel that way about every record, but that's what I wanted to do on this one. So. Yeah, not a lot of pre-production, not a lot of, hardly any overdub, maybe some guitar things. But what we would do is go in there and we'd play the song together live and try to get the best full band take. And then that would just kind of be it, you know. I mean, that's the one that just felt like it had the right kind of life, and everybody played good, and I would re-sing some things, and it's a very simple way to making music. It wasn't too complicated, and it was fun, and that's how I like it to happen.
Yeah, like to me, like this record felt very just organic. It felt very much like or it does feel. It feels very much like a, you know, I hate to use the word simple or something like that, but it's not complicated, I guess is the way I'd put it. Very easy. It's
not bogged down with any kind of overthinking. Yeah, it wasn't that. It was more natural. That was the hope, and I didn't know that would happen, but that was the hope, and it kind of worked out good. I think we were there for 5 days straight, and then me and Cody stayed an extra day to help kind of do a rough mix with Jason the studio owner and engineer, and he mixed the record as well. Yeah, man, I tried to keep it a small, simple, close to home kind of thing. I grew up 2 hours from Little Rock, like high school and stuff. I went to school, and I grew up in East Texas, and so that even though it wasn't local to me now, it felt local to my other life before I got to Georgia. Mm-hmm. And then I had a buddy down the road in Rome, Georgia, do the art for me, and the vinyl's being pressed in Athens, Georgia, and just it was very deliberate in all these choices. It was important to me.
Yeah. Okay, so I didn't know you were not originally from Georgia. I guess, like, how did you end up in Georgia? What's the story?
Yeah, I've been right here in basically Chatsworth, Georgia, Murray County for 16 years. But I moved out here from East Texas, and I got married to someone from here, and I had children. Was married for 10 years, and so this is where I will be forever because of these children, and I love it here, and I love East Texas too, but I mean, that's just, maybe when the kids get older, me and my wife now can move, but we're pretty stuck on staying put. I mean, I grew up not staying put, so it's a foreign kind of way for me, sticking things out. I've moved all over the place, lots of different states, lots of cities, lots of schools before it was my own choice to move. I went to at least 10, like middle and high school, junior highs before I finally ended up in East Texas. But yeah, I got married and got divorced. And some people move away from their kids, but it was a very important thing for me to be a part of my children's life. So that's why I'm still here.
Yeah. I only bring that up just because, a lot of times when someone writes about a place, it's almost because of there's that, and I think like it's naturally just a part of it, and it's the nostalgic aspect of their childhood,
Yeah.
And so I find that really interesting that, you're writing about a place that, yeah, by all intents and purposes is your home now, but,
yeah,
it's not tied in that childhood memory kind of way.
Yeah, it's definitely not a childhood memory. I was born in Mississippi and lived there twice before we moved back to Texas, where my mom and dad were from, I think when I was like 11, 10. So Mississippi would be my early memories, and I don't have those for some reason, and I have no desire to write about it either. And I think maybe because Georgia is kind of where I finally figured myself out. It feels more home than anywhere I've ever lived. It's kind of got, not reinvent yourself, but I left a lot of baggage back in East Texas and a lot of bad memories and a lot of crazy stuff. So moving here 16 years ago, it's kind of like starting over and clean slate, and all my memories and experiences feel like they're from here for some reason.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, it's yeah, I guess, like, relating to this, because I was going to bring this up anyways, is I do find like the location record, if you will, to be like there being, it's one of those things where people have always made records about where this little, like, patch of land that they call home or whatever for forever. But it feels like within the last, 10 years or so, that these records are, I guess, like, it's been repopularized in a lot of ways. And I think that like maybe it's tied to Jason Isbell and him releasing Southeastern. There being like maybe like a renaissance period of these records about corners of my place. Of course, like, Springsteen's always done it, but you get what
Nebraska.
I'm saying?
Yeah, that was a good one. Yeah, I understand, and I feel like I don't feel like I wrote about North Georgia out of a place of proud being where I'm from, or a place of this is my local pride.
Right.
You know, I mean, I didn't really like glorify or write about the beautiful things of North Georgia. So it wasn't to show how I'm proud of where I'm from. I mean, although I think being proud of where you're from is kind of weird anyways. I mean, you're just there, so why are you so proud of that, you know? You should take pride in your community work and things you do like that, but just having this empty kind of pride when you just sit at home just because you're from there, that's kind of weird to me, you know? But
I get that, yeah.
yeah, so I didn't write it from that point or POV. It's just, I don't know why I wrote about place and why I was so interested in it, you know. But you're right about the Renaissance and Isbell. I think his was more of a broad blue collar than a certain or a specific corner or pocket of places. This is more of a universal kind of thing, which can resonate with more people for sure. Yeah, man, I don't know. It's kind of. I'm thinking about my next record, and there's some kind of obligation that I shouldn't have, but I put these things on myself all the time, where I feel like I'm supposed to continue, like no matter what, writing about North Georgia, and that I have no authority to write about anything other than this area, you know, and that's ludicrous. I can write about whatever I want to, you know, but yeah. I put these stipulations on myself, and I don't know why. I'm trying not to, because it limits, you know, the songs that I could release. I think I have a record that I could release that has nothing to do with North Georgia, but I feel weird about that for some reason. Like I need to be writing about here, and I don't know why. Strange.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Like the local, or like where you're from, like that proudness.
Yeah.
I do also find it strange, even though I will fully admit that, you know, as a Texan, like I almost always just naturally say, "Oh yeah, I'm from West Texas," and like there is like that.
You're from Texas? You're in Texas? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm out here in Lubbock. So yeah, but yeah, you just I don't know. My whole thing on any kind of like regionalism, I guess, as far as like you being proud of that area, or like just is. It shouldn't be like that number one thing on your list of like being proud of. Like that can't be your entire
your identity.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So,
but it is for a lot of small towns for sure. And yeah, I grew up in Texas, and when I moved here, I was proud of Texas for some weird reason. I'm like, yeah, I'm from Texas. I'm like, what? I don't feel that. I don't feel like I'm from Texas anymore. It just kind of just went away. But Texas is one of the, I would say one of the leading states in this weird kind of pride, you know?
Yeah.
They're their own ecosystem, everything. You guys are. My mom was born in Amarillo and still got a lot of family there. Yeah. Rodeo cousins. You know anything about rodeo?
A little bit. No, I'm not like, you know, former bear bronc rider or nothing like that. But yeah, a touch of it, I guess.
Yeah, my cousin is like some Hall of Famer. His name's Trevor Brazil. I don't even barely know him though, but he's like I don't even know what he does, roping, calf roping and all that jazz, but he's like 10-time, I don't even know what their awards are called or anything like that, but he's big time in the rodeo world, and he's out of Amarillo, and that's close to Lubbock. Yeah. It's close enough.
Yeah, it's yeah, I think like it's always funny, like I guess like just how big Texas is, you know, because you mentioned like East Texas during all this.
And that's not even Texas to you.
Yeah, like that's exactly it. And like West Texas ain't like Texas to anyone from really East Texas either. Yeah. It's like there's so many. The Texan pride thing in general, yes, there's that overwhelming Texan pride thing, but there's also like 5 states within the state of Texas.
Yeah, that's true. There's individual regional Texas prides, East Texas. And, yeah, it's crazy. East Texas reminds me a lot of North Georgia without the mountains and hills. It kind of the pine trees and
Right.
even the people, and sometimes the accents as well. It kind of just feels the same, but it's prettier here.
Is that in relation maybe to like it just kind of being, is there like more Southern Gothic in East Texas feel than
I would say there was more of that than any other Texas area. Yeah.
Yeah.
It feels Southern there and not like some Texas, it could just feel like the Midwest, you know what I mean? It doesn't feel like the South at all. But East Texas, it did definitely, a lot of hillbillies in East Texas and Arkansas, you know, right there in Louisiana. Right. Shreveport was like 40 minutes away. So Oklahoma's, you know, it's hit or miss with feeling Southern or not sometimes too, you know, like Texas.
Yeah, Texas to me feels very transitional.
Yeah.
There is like that aspect of the Midwest. I think people underrate Oklahoma as far as being Midwestern because it is so close to like Kansas City and like that version of the Midwest. But yeah, like obviously Texas has like more of a Western frontier feel to the further west you get. I'm not saying anything groundbreaking there, but
yeah. East Texas I always felt like I was from the South when I lived there, but I didn't realize that I basically wasn't until I ended up here in Georgia. It's a different type of the way people view things. It's pretty different.
It's been really great talking with you today, dude. I really enjoy this record, and hopefully you come to Lubbock sometime.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you having me, and thanks for digging the record. We, I think we had some shows booked for Dallas and Lubbock not long ago when this all, started happening. But hopefully we can get back out there.
All right, thanks for listening. Be sure to check out Calico Jim when it is released this Friday. Check out Southern Opera in the meantime. And I'll see y'all later this week for another episode of New Slang.